Buongiorno. Okay, it's working. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience, first of all. I'm Francesca Caferri. I work for La Repubblica, and I will be introducing this panel. I want to start thanking, in a very special way, the festival. We do it every year, but this year it's even more important. We have been working on this panel for something like 16 months. We thought about doing it last year. It was impossible because they were working as maniacs, 24 hours a day. I was traveling all the time, so Arianna and Chris decided we could postpone it, do it for the 2025 edition. So finally, here we are. And I think it became more and more important to have this panel and to hear these voices in Perugia today. Why is it like this? Because, it's been 18 months since October 7, 2023, and the ongoing war on Gaza, which started basically immediately. And there is something that maybe we don't see from the outside, but when you go to Israel, it's very clear that the Israeli society is living in a completely different world. What we called, in the preparation of this panel, we called it ignorance. So with the death toll in Gaza becoming higher and higher every day, South Africa is petitioning the ICJ under the Convention for Prevention of Genocide, and there is an international warrant issued by the ICC against the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Still, Israeli society is living in a very different world from what we see here in Europe and even what people see in the United States. Why? This is happening also because the majority of Israeli media are playing the same game that the government is playing. Basically, they are complicit, and they chose to take a side from the very, very beginning and to hide what's going on in Gaza and even more in the West Bank. So in this panel, we want to discuss the Israeli media coverage since October 7th and before. And we want to do it focusing on one independent media outlet, which is in Hebrew, and this is very important. I'm sure many of you read 972, the magazine, but there is also Local Call, which is the Hebrew version of 972, and then they will explain which are the differences and the points in common. So here we have the team of Local Call, and we will discuss with them their work documenting and resisting the war in Gaza, the ongoing military and settlers attack in the West Bank, and why they were able to be one of the few platforms that are calling for ceasefire, for the return of hostages, of course, but also for a future of peace and justice without apartheid, without genocide in Israel, in Palestine, in the West Bank, in Gaza. Ghousoon.
Hello, my name is Ghousoon Bisharat. I'm the editor-in-chief of Plus 972 magazine, but in this panel we will discuss Local Call, and tomorrow we will talk more about Plus 972's work. So to continue with Francesca about Local Call, I will moderate this panel with Francesca. So a bit more information about Local Call. In Hebrew, it's called Sichami Komit, and it's a Hebrew language news website committed to democracy, peace, equity, social justice, transparency, freedom of information, and to resisting Israel occupation and apartheid. The site was co-founded and is co-published by Just Vision, which is an American organization that works on filling the media gap on Israel-Palestine through supporting independent journalism, and Plus 972 Advancement of Citizen Journalism, which also publishes Plus 972 magazine. Many Local Call and 972 journalists, writers, and contributors publish on both platforms, but we have two separate editorial teams working closely together. I'm really honored to introduce my friends and colleagues, and we'll start with Oren Persico, who's a staff writer for The Seventh Eye. The Seventh Eye is a media watchdog organization. It is an independent Israeli outlet devoted to journalism and freedom of the press. On my right is Miron Rapaport, who's an editor at Local Call. Miron is an award-winning investigative journalist with over 30 years of experience in the Israeli media, including long time as the head of the news department at Haaretz and editor at the then largest paper in the country, Yidiot Ahronot. Samah Salaimi is a columnist and an activist writing on gender, feminism, social justice, and the Palestinian struggle. Samah is a regular contributor to Local Call, and Yunit Moses is an editor at Local Call with 25 years of experience in the Israeli media, including founding the global desk of Kalkalist, which is Yidiot Ahronot's economic newspaper, and she was heading the news desk at the Marker, which is Haaretz's economic newspaper. And I would like to start this panel with Oren and ask you maybe to give us all an overview on how the Israeli media has covered the war. And maybe first, if you can tell us a little bit how Israeli media covered the Palestinian issue even before October 7.
Okay, hi, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you all for enduring the line outside. The Israeli media failed miserably covering the war in Gaza. I've been covering the Israeli media for over 20 years, most of the time at the Seventh Eye. And we've had wars, we've had terror attacks. It has never been so severe, the state of the Israeli media and the way it does not cover the reality. I'll give you just a few examples. A few weeks ago, the Hamas office in Gaza stated that the number of Palestinians killed reached 50,000. And if you look at the Israeli media, of course, Haaretz had a big magazine article about the number, how we got there, the spikes, where, when. But other mainstream Israeli outlets barely mentioned the number. So I'm not talking about not showing the suffering, not showing the horrible conditions, not showing the bodies, just the plain facts, the number, 50,000. Even Israel's military doesn't claim that more than half of them aren't civilians, right? So it's a staggering number, and it was barely mentioned. The times that the horrible situation in Gaza does manage to enter the news cycle is rare, and when it does, it's also spinned. For example, the attack on the paramedics just a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, it did manage to enter the news cycle in Israeli Hebrew media, largely because we were caught lying, right? The IDF said they had no lights on, no vests, and then the New York Times published the video. But when it entered, it was framed not as, dear Lord, what have we become? We are killing paramedics and then lying to ourselves and to the world. The framing was how this will hurt the Israeli Hasbara effort, the Israeli propaganda effort. And like you said before, Francesca, it's a totally different war in Israel. It's like the Israeli media has created a dome of ignorance surrounding the society. They do not know, they do not want to know, but they don't get it from the media about the basic things that's happening in Gaza, just an hour or two away from their home. And it's such a complete failure of the most basic profession of journalism, right? You have to show what's going on. It's never been this bad, and I'll just briefly give two reasons why I think it's never been this bad. First, the trauma of October 7th is real. It's not made up. it's real in Israeli society, and as long as there are hostages in Gaza, it's a different situation than we've ever encountered. Secondly, the media landscape in Israel has changed very much from even 5 years ago. Not just the fragmentation, but also we have now a very popular populist TV channel with incitement and conspiracy theories and ultra-right-wing lunatics speaking all the time there about atrocities. They want more atrocities. And it's affected also the mainstream media that is not that channel. They are afraid. They are afraid to lose viewers. They're afraid that they would be considered part of the enemy, like a lot of Netanyahu's followers do consider them.
Thank you very, very much, Oren, because I think this is something that we don't get here. We don't understand how different is the narrative. So, Yonit, I'm sure that people in the room are much more familiar with Plus 972 magazine, but not with Local Call. So can you explain us what's Local Call, what you do, how does it work?
Yes, hi, and thank you for having us here. So Local Call was founded in 2014, as Ghousoon said, as a joint project of the two non-profits, publisher of 972 magazine and Just Vision, after they decided that their respective missions, which was challenging mainstream media with 972 and Just Vision telling big stories about nonviolent resistance through film, were equally vital in the Hebrew media. It was a long time ago. It sounds like forever. So at the beginning, Local Call model was based on a group of bloggers. It was, they were writing voluntarily, and there were 2 or 3 coordinating editors. In 2017, it was decided to fundamentally change the site, expand, professionalize the editorial team, create a pool of freelance journalists to enable better coverage of vital news, and invest in long-term investigations and projects. Today, we have 3 professional editors. I'm one of them, and also Meron. 4 staff writers, a few regular writers like Samach, quite a few freelancers, various professionals who write from time to time. We also have a brilliant social media manager who recently started producing our podcast. To be able to avoid ads and paywalls, which we don't want, we also developed in recent year a membership program of monthly donations alongside fundraising and from foundations and philanthropists. The community of members is central part not only of our original organizational model, but also of our political model from the very beginning of the site. Also central to the site's core objective from the beginning is prioritizing silenced voices and vulnerable communities, and insistence on equality, justice, and freedom for all lives from the river to the sea. I started to work in Local Call in 2019, after some 20 years in mainstream economic media, which is a different universe. At that stage of my career, I was very certain we really need independent media in Israel and in general, but I had a lot of doubt if we can do it with so little resources, because it's a really small site in comparison to a mainstream newspaper. And not long after I started, we started working, it was 2019, 2020, about a really big investigative series about the crime in the Arab society in Israel, which, you know, before the war, it's horrible. It's a lot of murders and stuff like this. Suharaf wrote it. And then it actually reshaped the discourse in the Israeli media about the phenomenon. So all my doubts were alleviated. In terms of professionalism, critical perspective, actually doing journalism and not just echoing the mainstream narrative, which unfortunately a lot of times means just speaking to Palestinians in Israel. I believe we have no competition in the Hebrew media today. This became even more acute after October 7th, when the lines, like Oren said, between media and propaganda blurred really significantly.
I would like to underline the importance of all these kind of conversation happening in Hebrew. This is not for an international audience. This is for internal audience, and it makes a huge difference. So that's why I want to ask to Meron. I mean, Yonit just said local. She talked about long projects, investigations, because we also have to say that you don't do a daily coverage. I mean, you're not a daily that goes after every single headline. You pick your stories. So can you explain us what's the importance of this kind of coverage?
Good morning, and thank you for coming, and I really apologize for those waiting outside. I know that the police is doing their work, but I don't think we need special protection. The people in Gaza need protection, not us. I came to local call from more mainstream media, Haaretz and Yediot Ahronot, and I think even much before the war, I think we played an important role. But I think from the start of this war, I think we played a unique role. I think it's a little difficult for me to speak about ourselves, but I think, yes, we did play a unique role. I think this has to do with a very fundamental issue, you know, like everyone in Israel, like every Israelis, and I think also the Palestinian on the staff, I know that the Palestinian on the staff also, we were shocked by the atrocities of October 7. We were terrified when we saw what happened with the Hamas attack. But while acknowledging, of course, these atrocities, we remembered from the first moment that there was also not only October 7th, there was also October 6th, meaning there were, before October 7th, there was the siege on Gaza, there was occupation, there was apartheid in the West Bank, there was the Nakba in 48. We remembered all that, and October 7, while nothing justifies what happened on October 7, nothing justifies these atrocities, they didn't come out of nowhere. There is a background to all of this. And we knew, I think, already on October 7 that there will be an October 8, meaning we knew that Israel will react harshly, violently. I don't think that any one of us imagined the scale of destruction and death and killing that Israel will launch on Gaza, but we knew it. So there is October 7, there is October 6, and there is October 8. And I think this made us, enable us, first of all, to take all that happened into a context, not justifying, but into a context. And context is extremely important in days like this, days where people lose the humanity in these moments. And the context was, of course, important. And that was from the first day. And I think it also enabled us to do the investigation we did along the way during the war. And there were really, I think, again, I don't want to boast too much, but I think they were groundbreaking, from the rule of engagement, the very permissive rules of engagement of the Israeli army in Gaza, to the extensive use of AI in order to choose target, and the horrific number of collateral damage allowed for these attacks. The investigation on the expulsions of Palestinian communities in the West Bank. on the spying on the ICC and other investigation. I think when you come from this understanding that this is everything in context, and maybe I would add another thing, and again, I'm trying not to boast, but I think we felt, because we had Palestinian partner, of course, in our team, in local call, but of course, 972, there were so many writers from Gaza. I think we took on ourselves to try, at least try, to represent and give voice to all the people between the river and the sea, everyone. That we think, of course, we come from the basis that everyone between the rivers and the sea has a right, equal rights to live safely and to have dignity. And I think this is what was in our mind, that we must give voice to all the people between the river and the sea. It was reflected also in the numbers of readers. In local call, we jumped for something like 300,000 unique readers to more than 880, 680, more than 200%. And in, of course, in 972, the jump was even higher. But I think this is a part of really feeling that we have a moral duty in this moment. And I think what we did had repercussion outside Israel-Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Meron. Now to Samah. Samah is a Palestinian citizen of Israel, just like me. We're among the lucky ones. And she is among the first Palestinian contributors to Local Call. Can you tell me, Samah, why are you writing in Hebrew at all? And do you think at this point in time, with the ongoing genocide in Gaza, is there a point in talking to the Israeli public?
I think that this is the point, to speak to these people, to the Israelis. I am Palestinian citizen of Israel. I'm third generation of the Nakba. I think it's this war will end sometime, hopefully soon, and the narrative will stay there. The story of what's happened in October 7, what's happened in every single year or decade of this history of this conflict have to be documented, written, and protest, and to be there, because otherwise it will vanish. And for many years, other people take our role as to interpret and to speak and to analyze what's happening in the Palestinian society in Hebrew by Israeli Jewish who are originally from Arab countries, and they became experts of me as a Palestinian feminist activist. So I do that because I don't want anyone to speak in my behalf, to speak or to tell my story, because I can do it in a perfect Hebrew, the most clearest protest, vocal, radical Hebrew that I can. And I write for 972 and Local Call for the last decade because nobody wants to tell the story or that I want to deliver, and I have to be lucky, to open the doors. My first column in Local Call was on the war of 2014, like 10 years ago, on Gaza, and it was too radical for lots of, platform journalists, websites in Israel, and the collective of Local Call open the doors. So this is one of the things. The other things that I do believe in shared struggle. I do believe that I'm, as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, have the duty to deliver and to tell the stories of women in Gaza, what's happened to the women's shelter in Gaza, for example, to bring the stories of the women in the refugee camps in Jenin and Tulkarem and Nablus and other places. I have to bring that to the front side, the living room of the average Israeli family, because nobody does this job. I know that the Hebrew speakers around the world are small, tiny, percentage of the people. I know that, but I have the privilege to speak perfect Hebrew. I graduated the Hebrew University. I have master's degree in gender studies and from the Hebrew U, but I want the story to be told in their language. I can't hear the voice. We didn't know about what's happened. I did that job for you, so they have to be thankful, actually, for the activism that we do. I do like also the idea that I'm not alone. Like, I speak Arabic, I publish in Arabic, I'm very proud to publish in English as well. Some of my articles were translated to German, Italy, and other languages, but my struggle is on my land. Between the river and the sea, there's two people, and they need and they deserve to live together with equal rights, with dignity, with peace for two people. So I know that I'm not speaking to the right, the fascist right-wing activists who control Israel, the current Israel. But the day that I lost my last Jewish reader, I will stop. Meanwhile, I see that there are partners there. I have people who support me and want to be active with me and believe in my ideology, and I want to be there with them because I don't have the privilege to give up.
Now, back to Oren. In one interview that you gave to 972 some time ago, you confessed that you don't really watch the Israeli media. I do, and I really don't understand how the Israeli media can be so vigorous and militant when covering internal Israeli issues like Israeli politics, issues like corruption, investigation, for those who don't know, investigation of Israeli journalists from mainstream Israeli media led to criminal charges against prime ministers. They put one president in jail, but it always fails on the Palestinian issue. How do you explain that? And can you tell me if you see now any cracks, 18 months into this genocidal war, do you see any changes happening?
Well, first of all, I have to clarify that I watch a lot of Israeli media. What I said in the interview is that I cannot watch the news program start to finish. I watch clips on social media or on websites, but just watching the propaganda news start to finish, a lot of Israeli journalists say we are first and foremost Israelis and then journalists, and that's why we don't show what's going on in Gaza. Well, I believe I'm first and foremost human and then a journalist, so I have to stay sane in order to do my job. So that's for that. But yeah, you're right. The Israeli media is very critical of the Netanyahu government and has real teeth and do a good job exposing the corruption and following up on their exposures. And yet they fail constantly regarding the occupation in the West Bank and, of course, the war in Gaza. If you think about it, the Israeli media, I don't know if you're aware, but in the beginning of 23, Netanyahu started to accelerate the shift of Israel from a democracy, at least for the Jewish citizens, towards autocracy. And a lot of Israeli civilians started demonstrating against it. The Israeli media sees itself as a victim, a target of Netanyahu's overhaul, judicial overhaul, and rightly so. I mean, he's going after what's left of liberalism in Israel, in the academia, in the media, of course. civil servants and civil organizations, and they perceive rightly that he's going after them as well. And so they have every reason to fight back. The Palestinians is a different war. Killing Palestinians does not affect the Israeli journalists the same way as targeting themselves, of course, but also the High Court and the academia. So they don't see the Palestinians as colleagues. They don't see them as partners to the same struggle. So it will require a lot more effort to have empathy towards the Palestinian victims, as opposed to towards all your liberal friends in the universities, etc.
And do you see any cracks now?
Well, it's maybe starting to differ. You know, there's the calls to not enlist and not serve. It began in the very fringe, the far left in Israel. It's starting to slowly move towards the center. It took a lot more time than I thought it would. But I think if Netanyahu will try to recruit the reserves again to conquer Gaza, which might happen, it will be a much more wider phenomena. And the Israeli media will be forced to give it more attention and bring that voice. But it's only in the beginning of the change. I think that once, if Netanyahu's government disperses, that will be a game changer. Because after a new government will be formed, not only the judicial overhaul will be paused and the attacks against civil society, I think the Israeli media will find the strength to report more strongly against the war. That's, I think, the hope that we have right now.
I would like to connect to what you just said before I ask my next question to Meron, to underline something that we don't see here as well, because maybe you don't realize it from the inside. But when you guys see on TV this massive protest for a ceasefire, for the hostages, in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, even in Jerusalem, those who support a kind of an agreement with the Palestinian two-state solution or whatever, I mean, just are a minority. And they are always on the side. Okay, in Tel Aviv, there are two different places where they protest. I've been there quite often with Oren, who will talk tomorrow at the 972 panel. But it's not, if you see a huge crowd, it's not that the crowd is supporting a long-term solution. With the Palestinian, the crowd is supporting a short-term solution for a ceasefire in Gaza and the return of hostages. It's like two completely different realities. And it's something that, once again, from the outside, you don't get. Meron, we would like to ask you the same question, more or less, that we asked Oren. Do you see any crack? Do you see any shift in the Israeli media, in the public?
Before I will talk about the shifts, and I see cracks, and you know, I'm often accused by my friends as being optimists, and too optimist and detached from reality, and I try to see cracks all the time. And maybe sometimes I invent them. But before going into the cracks, as I said, I worked for mainstream media for over 30 years, including Yediot Achronot, was the biggest circulation newspaper, and other news outlets. And I have many friends, and the Israeli media did a lot of good things in inquiring corruption. it is brave. But these friends that I considered my friends, I think the Israeli media, generally speaking, of course there were individuals, especially in Haaretz, the Israeli media in general betrayed its profession. It betrayed what is expected of it. And it is in two levels, on two levels. First, and Oren referred to it, is the information itself. It gave very little information, distorted information. Luckily I speak and hear Arabic, and I didn't have any choice but to go to Al Jazeera and other Arab-speaking channels in order to understand what's going on in the war that my country is involved in, because from the Israeli media I couldn't understand anything. If there was, so this is one thing. The second, and I think this is maybe the worst, is that Israeli media, or at least large part of it, were part of the war machine themselves. They didn't just give distorted or flawed information. They joined the incitement, hearing reporters and commentators in the studios of the Israeli mainstream channels, calling for example, only by force, by military force, can we release the hostages, while they knew from the first day that this will only kill the hostages. And we saw that, and they knew it, and still they again and again cited this propaganda from the government and the army. And to level Gaza, you heard people, journalists, saying, there's a picture from Gaza and you see still buildings, and one of the journalists would say, why do I still see buildings in these neighborhoods in Gaza? Why they are still standing? We should flatten Gaza. Journalists, analysts, this is a betrayal of your job, of your profession, of what what this profession gives you. And I think this is the worst. And yes, to the cracks, yes, I do see cracks. The cracks has to do, I think, with fatigue from the war, from the fact that the hostages are not released after 18 months, from the very deep feeling in Israel that Netanyahu prolongs the war for his political aims and for his political ideas. Yes, and we see cracks, and these cracks that we see the reservists saying we will not come, we will not show up, are reflected also, I think, in how the war is covered. You hear more and more, even in mainstream media, about the moral side of the war, much less than wanted, but more than before. There are cracks there, yes.
Thanks, Meron. I think every panel in this amazing festival should start with a call for solidarity and for action to protect our colleagues in Gaza. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, this is the deadliest period for journalists since the CPJ began gathering data in '92. 209 Palestinian journalists and media workers have been killed by the Israeli army since the start of the war. I think we can all agree in this panel, and I'm sure many of you in the audience, that it is our duty to stand in support with the journalists in Gaza in every way possible, and stand in solidarity with the families and the colleagues of those who were killed. I would like to ask Unit if you saw any sort of solidarity outside 972 and local call among like the mainstream Israeli media outlets with the journalists in Gaza?
Well, the short answer is no. Not just with journalists, there is no solidarity at all. I do not have enough time to describe the depth to which the Israeli media and society in general have sunk in order to be able to justify the horrors being committed in our name, masquerading against revenge. There ever was a time for that idiom, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig two graves. It's now. It is not just indifference, not just coming from crazy right-wingers. It is a level of dehumanization that's unprecedented, and which I believe robs us of our humanity and fractures our society to the point of no repair. I'm the pessimist. I don't think we'll ever recover for this. We can see it very well in our work. From the beginning of the war, thanks to Ghousoon here, we assembled a really exceptional group of writers from within Gaza. We've been the only news outlet in Hebrew, bringing their voices, reporting of what's happening on the ground without the mediation of the army. And not many people want to read these stories. We see it in the traffic data. And the stories are becoming, of course, more and more gruesome as time passes. And it's very frustrating not being able to break through this wall of active and violent indifference. It's not just not caring, it's actively not caring, trying not to care. And dehumanization, and of course, not being able to stop what's happening. I mean, very frustrating. But even so, I believe we have an historical and moral obligation in having those stories published in Hebrew, even if nobody reads them. If only for the sake of saying, don't even try to say later, you couldn't have known. It is there, it is in Hebrew. You could read it, if only for giving voices to the witnesses. And personally, I've been translating a lot of these stories in the past 18 months, and it's horrible, but I think it's one of the most important things I ever did in my career.
So we have been discussing on how to close this panel, and it's going to be up to Sama, and because there is something else that has not been reported in these months. We have been so busy talking about the hostages, the attacks, Gaza, this, that, and then Lebanon, that maybe we somehow forgot or left aside what's happening with the peace movement in Israel. I call it the peace movement. I know it's a very simple way to call it, but it's a shortcut. Whatever. There are people who want a long-lasting solution. And the pain, the challenges, the despair that they've been going through during these 18 months, it's impressive and has not been reported. Sama wrote some wonderful things about this. I mean, the piece that you wrote about Vivian Silver, which was published on Local Call first and then translated, and that's where I read it, on Plus 972 magazine. Vivian Silver was a peace activist, and she died in Be'eri, in her house on October 7th, and it was Sama's friend. So, up to you to finish. Where do we go from here? Is there any hope for a joint struggle, a joint vision for the future?
Oh my God. After this, yesterday you told me that I am a very strong voice in the peace movement. I say like very strong voice in a very weak movement. So any voice is count. Like we are a small minority now in Israel, coalition of Palestinian Israelis who do believe that not only in this, the minimum of ceasefire, we believing that the next future we deserve a peace process and we deserve a solution for the catastrophes that we live in. I think that in the beginning of the war, it was, I believe that the first article was published like few days after October 7, and I have so many Palestinian friends who call me and they say this is an action of encouragement. It's like, it's really, how do you do that? Like how you gather this power and you know, the vision. I said, because we have to. You know, this is, we were all in shock, and we have to write what we think because we don't have the option to be silent. It was really, you know, big struggle to publish anything during the last 16 months, especially about the relationship and that different angle of the peace movement, of real partnerships between Palestinian and Israelis, and there is a potential alliance out there, and there is around us hidden lefties who are denying, and they recruit themselves to the war, and they left the peace movement. And I lost friends, I lost Jewish friends and Palestinian friends from different reasons. But we have to carry on, to keep going. This is what Palestinians do. This is my grandmother said, that we are Palestinians who live in this place, we born in this place, that there is people who believe that they are the chosen people in this land, and we are the chosen people to resist. So I want to be in that side of the map. And I think that one of the things that I live in Wahed al-Salam Neve Shalom, it's the oasis of peace. It's the small community where Palestinian and Israelis choose to live together 50 years ago. Nobody killed anyone, and we have very clear statements against the war, for ceasefire, helping Gaza, and we do believe that we deserve more. And our struggle now is to deliver not hope. Like, hope is a tool of any peace activist, any feminist. Like, why feminist? The feminist struggle led by women, because women suffer. So I don't expect the privileged men to join easily. They have a process. It's the same thing with the national conflict between Palestinians and the Israelis. We know who have the power. We know how they have the military tools, but we know what is justice. We know that we have to carry on and to resist and to do more to bring this region peace, because we deserve it. And I can share with you a small example of a project that we launched in our peace movement. It's called the Peace Press, because the peace word became a curse or bad word that you can't talk about it. And there, in the beginning, we were a coalition of 7 people who published and mentioned the ceasefire. Now, in our WhatsApp group, there are around 400 people, activists, Jewish and Palestinians, who publish constantly in their social media to seek for ceasefire and, yes, peace. So it's sometimes, annoy me that, to demand the Palestinian, activists, feminist act to bring the hope to the table and to speak about the future. But now I know that this is my duty. This is something that I cannot leave alone. My Palestinian colleagues, the peacemakers, and the potential allies and partners are out there. And the last thing that I want to contribute to this panel is that, the Israeli lefties, or the remains, let's say the remains of what we believe that they are the potential partners, know for sure that they cannot change this government without the support for the Palestinian citizens inside Israel. We are almost 2 million people, and they know that they can't change this fascist regime without our help. And we are part of this what's so-called democracy, and we will use any voice, any power to say what have been said, and this is our duty. And we do not have the privilege to give up. This is what we have to do, and we keep going, we carry on. This is what Palestinians do.
So I think we made the perfect choice. She was the one who had to close. So thank you very much to all of you, including Ghousoon, for being here. We will look forward to see you tomorrow at the other panel with Plus 972 magazine. And we want to thank once again Arianna and Chris and the festival for having us, all of us here, And all of you for your patience. Thank you.